the challenge for leaders is to, make sure that in some way their teams are being compensated if they're being asked to do that. It can be through a formal comp plan, or it can just be contests and spiffs and things that are a little easier to weave into your budget. So just make sure people feel recognized for that work, because it's really valuable work.
Hello and welcome to a whole new episode of Engati CX. I'm your host Aish, and today we have a customer success genius with us on the show. But before I introduce you to our guest, allow me to introduce you to the magic of Engati. Engati is the world's leading multilingual, no-code digital customer experience platform, available across 14 channels with 45,000 solutions, created across 186 countries in every domain and use case. Engati has also been recognized as a top platform by Inc.com, TechWorld, CIO, and many others. We run the Engati blog, video channel, and the Engati CX podcast, receiving upwards of 400,000 visitors annually. And now for our guest. Kristen Hayer is the founder and CEO of the Success League. She believes customer success must be at the heart of any business, and has been building and leading award-winning sales, marketing, and customer success teams, primarily for technology organizations for over 20 years. It's led her to build the Success League, whose aim is to help companies build great customer success teams. So before we dive into our interview with Kristen, don't forget to subscribe to Engati, tap the bell icon to get access to exclusive content from thought leaders from around the globe. So welcome to the show, Kristen. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you so much.
So let's dive into our first question.
Okay.
Customer success is a relatively new discipline. So why do businesses need customer success, and are there any risks if it's not implemented?
Yeah, so customer success, in my opinion, is the focus on delivering and demonstrating a return on investment to customers. And that's really the heart of what customer success is designed to do. And it's about earning the customer's business over and over again so that they renew and they continue to do business with you over time. I think that organizations that rely solely on some of the older disciplines like account management or support or professional services are kind of missing out on the big picture around providing value. All of those are really important functions. Account management is the commercial side of customer success. Support is the technical side of customer success. Professional services, the service side of customer success, and you need all of those things. But the other piece of the puzzle is customer success, which is really around the value side of customer success and continuing to prove that value over time. So I think the risk that companies face if they don't have a customer success function inside their organization is that their customers may be failing to see the value in what they're delivering. Because customers value different things. They buy your solution for different reasons, and they're not always the reasons that you would think about. So if there's no one there to kind of dig into what a customer really cares about and position the value of your solution in their terms, they may be thinking that it's not worth the money that they're paying for it. So I think a solid customer success program is a program that incorporates all of those disciplines: account management, technical support, professional services, and customer success. And they provide a holistic journey that drives toward customer value together.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds less like a discipline, but more about it's more about something holistic. It's not just one concept.
It is.
This is the whole thing. So what happens if a business doesn't implement customer success into their strategy?
The things that I've seen happen as we've been working with our clients is that customers, in worst case scenario, customers just don't see the value that you're talking to them about. And I'll give you an example. We had a early client of ours was getting frustrated because they had people in a pilot program, and then they were leaving the pilot program and they weren't renewing at the end of the pilot. And a pilot program is a really expensive proposition, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're getting everything set up. Often a pilot program is free or at a very reduced cost, so you're really not making your money back unless that customer renews at the end of the pilot. So they were frustrated with this and they didn't understand why it was happening. Mm-hmm. And when we digging with the clients to ask them what was going on and why they weren't renewing with these pilots, what we found is that the pitch that the salespeople and the customer success people, even though they had customer success people there, were giving them wasn't aligned with what those customers really wanted to see in terms of value. They were talking about how the solution prevented employees from turning over, when in fact, every single customer that we talked to had a different reason for wanting to purchase the solution in the first place, but because no one was talking to them in their terms, they didn't see that value and they were leaving. And so when we realigned sales and we realigned customer success around talking about value, then it became a true customer success program, and it was demonstrating that value to those clients. We see things like that. That's sort of a severe case. Other things that we see when companies don't have a customer success program is that customers feel like it's every time someone's talking to them, it's just about making money from them, and it becomes a little too commercial, and they start to feel like they're just getting hit up for money all the time. That we see that when it's strictly an account management team in place and it's a very commercially focused team. And the other thing that happens when there's no customer success team in place is that the if it's all about support tickets, the customers get really narrowly focused on all the things that are going wrong with the solution, and they fail to see the big picture of what's going right with the solution because there's no one there that's telling them. And so they tend to get really myopically focused on the problems, and then they churn because they think the product's not that good. And so I think that in that case, customer success can really provide some balance.
Yeah, in a way, it kind of can be used as a marketing tactic. In a way, no customer wants to really feel like that. So
Right.
yeah, it's just one of those things where like a customer doesn't just want to feel like a number. They don't just want to feel like a ticket. And I think in a way it kind of does add on to the thing that you said, where it kind of makes the customer focus less about the positives and the features of the company and more of the problems that they're addressing. So that's really interesting. You actually brought that up.
Thank you.
So moving on to my next question, Christine, are there any rules that businesses should abide by when developing a strategy that guarantees customer success?
Yeah, I think if you keep coming back to your touch point, your kind of your North Star of providing value to customers, and that you are there to provide a return on investment to customers, it's really hard to go wrong if you keep that as your focus and you're designing the program. That leaves you a lot of flexibility. So that means you can hire a bunch of CSMs and you can have a high touch white glove type of service if you want to, or you can have a fully automated digital program as long as it's there and it's focusing on the value that customers want to see. So as long as both of those kinds of programs are helping customers see a return on their investment, they're both effective programs. And so that gives you a lot of leeway to build a program that's incredibly effective in customer success. So I like to kind of keep that as the focus. This is something we remind our customers about all the time, like keep value as the focus. And when you do that, it's really hard to stray off the right path. Now, you do have to think about, how do you staff your team? There's different ways to do that at different stages of the customer's life cycle or the company's life cycle. So, you need to be thinking about that. So there may be an early stage company that only has one CSM that's sort of doing all of these things. And a later stage company, you start to see different roles get split out. But if they're all there, they should all be orchestrated so that they're in support of a customer journey that's been mapped out. And that journey needs to be moving toward value.
Oh, definitely. You bring up a very interesting point about the importance of defining a goal. I feel like a lot of times, a lot of these companies, they kind of have a very vague goal where it's just, I want to guarantee success for my customers. I want to make sure they're satisfied. But they're not really thinking about what that really means, like in terms of metrics they can calculate. And then when you define those metrics, you can kind of streamline the process and really build something successful. Then you can actually define, these are the gaps that I need to fill in. What can I do to do that? What do I need to do that? What tools do I need? So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And I think high touch program, you have the ability, should be having a, very strategic conversation with your clients at the very beginning to say, hey, here, let's talk about what your objectives are, and let's map those out, and let's set
Mhm.
some goals around them, and have an actual success plan that you share with your clients. So that's a good best practice in a high touch program. In a tech touch or digital program, you have to be a little creative, right? So what I have seen is a lot of companies that are doing that really well interview those smaller clients that are going to need to be in a digital program, and really try to globally identify maybe 3 to 5 things that they're looking for.
Mhm.
And then in the sales cycle, have the salespeople kind of check mark which one was most important to them during that sales cycle, and that sends them down a digital journey that matches their desired outcome. So there's ways to do it even in a digital program. You just have to be a little more creative.
Mhm. So you mentioned high touch and you also mentioned tech. So is high touch more human based, whereas tech more automated?
Yeah, that's how we think about it. So a high touch program can be, mostly human driven with usually some technology support in there. Um, and then there's hybrids that start to be more technology driven, more of a balance between people and technology. And then there's digital programs that are mostly technology focused. It's really hard to have a purely digital program. There's usually at least a person or two involved in that, but that's kind of the dream.
Hmm. Definitely. So you mentioned hybrid programs. So are there any digital tools that really enhance customer success? Um, I think the most common tools we're seeing right now that are really a hybrid is kind of chatbots, but with the human handover and the live chat function. So how effective are those in building customer relationships?
I mean, I think there's a lot of technology tools for customer success right now. Um, they're all effective if you have the thinking behind them. And I want to share a story. I heard it before, but I think that it will highlight what I'm talking about. So I had an experience with Delta Airlines, and
Mhm.
basically it could have been an awful experience. My flight got canceled. It got canceled about 3 hours before I was supposed to leave on it in the morning, and I was out on a walk when it got canceled, and I had my whole morning planned out to like pack my suitcase, get into get into the airport in plenty of time, and get on my flight. And so I'm out on my walk. I'm about a mile and a half away from my house, and on my phone, this little "your flight got canceled" pops up.
Oh no.
So I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is gonna be a nightmare."
I'm sorry
And I
that happened to you.
you know, everyone hates this when it happens. It said, go to the Delta app. And so I was like, "Ugh, we'll see what happens here. I'm probably gonna have to talk to somebody." I click on the Delta app. It gives me 4 choices for other flights to take that are leaving roughly at the same time and will get me into Chicago at roughly the same time. And I choose one of those. And I'm like, wow, that was actually really easy. It just put me on the flight automatically. I was like, great. I don't have to mess around. So I'm walking back and I'm realizing, okay, that flight I just chose leaves an hour earlier than the one that I was originally on. So I have to like hurry. I'm like scrambling, packing, get into my lift to go to the airport. And I'm in the lift and I'm like, oh, am I even going to make it through security? And I pull up my boarding pass on the app, and it had automatically upgraded me to the fast boarding. And so I got to go or fast security line. So I
Oh,
got to go
wow.
speed through security, and made it to the gate in time. And then when I got to the gate, I scanned my phone as I was boarding, and they had upgraded me to first class for the flight.
That's so
And I
nice.
was like, this could have been a disastrous morning. And because of technology, it actually ended up being a really good experience with Delta.
That's
And I've told that
incredible.
story a lot of times. What I
Hmm.
want to highlight about that story is that it didn't involve a single human to deliver a fantastic experience to me. But what it did involve is it involved a lot of thought ahead of time.
Hmm.
So somebody thought about, okay, if somebody's flight gets canceled, how do we create a great experience for them? And if somebody's had to move their flight to an earlier flight, how do we make sure they don't get stuck in security?
Hmm.
And how do we make sure that if all of this is to a person, that they have a great experience with us, let's upgrade them. Like someone thought through each of those little pieces of the journey.
That's
And by doing that, they were then able to deploy the technology to deliver on those experiences. So I think where we tend to get into trouble a little bit with technology is we're like, oh, there's a cool new piece of technology, let's get it. And then not enough thought goes into like, well, okay, but how are you going to actually use it and execute on it? And so I think that where I see technology like chatbots and chat be really effective is when the thought has gone into the work behind it and the experience that you're trying to create behind it. Because chatbots are only as good as the thought that went into them, right? You know that
Mhm.
intimately, I'm sure. So, that's where I feel like we miss the mark a bit in customer success.
It goes back to what you said before about defining the goals. If the goals aren't
Mhm.
defined, then there's no point in really implementing.
Yeah, yeah. So, I think what you want to do is you're thinking about where do you deploy technology. There is a lot of really cool stuff out there, and you should definitely take advantage of it, but you should make sure you've got that plan behind it first.
Hmm. I think lots of companies kind of see the potential in a product and they see the hype surrounding the product and they're
Mhm.
very eager to jump in on it because, all the cool kids are doing it. But
Yes.
what, but what ends up happening is that they've jumped on a product, they've invested money into it, and they're realizing, oh, I'm actually losing more customers than I thought, and it ends up causing a big loss because you're not only losing a customer that already leads to an economic loss, but you also have to find ways to replace for that customer. And so you have to invest in more tools to acquire more customers. So I guess people just have to be really careful.
Yeah, they do. And it's not like you need to, spend a ton of money or spend months and years designing this program. You can roll it out slowly in pieces when you're
Mhm,
thinking about a digital program, um but you do have to be thoughtful about your audience because really it's about your customers. So,
mhm,
if you have an audience that maybe isn't a good fit for chat or chatbots because maybe they're a demographic that just doesn't work very well for, then you need to keep that in mind and maybe you choose a different means of communicating. If you have a really tech savvy audience, they may love that. They probably don't want to talk to a person. So, I think that coming back to like what is going to give your customer the most value can also be applied to choosing the technology that works best for your program.
mhm. I guess companies really have to they have to really step into the customer's shoes to really guarantee that sort of success.
Yeah, they do. They do. And they need to interview customers. I mean, customers will tell you what they want to use and what they like and how they like to engage. And, you just have to get out there and do some listening and, interviewing.
Hmm. Definitely. So, what are the biggest customer success challenges being faced by customer success managers in 2020?
A couple of things came to mind. I think that our field is waking up to the idea that change management is a critical part of leading transformation inside of customer organizations. And that said, most CSMs have not had any formal training on change management
Mhm,
or how to help their customers through change. So I think educating CSMs on change management is important, and companies are starting to notice that and include that in their training programs and their uh, digital change programs and process design efforts as well. So we're seeing that start to really surface as an important topic for this coming year. The other one is people are struggling a little bit with digital transformation for sure.
mhm,
Um, we all talk about these digital CS programs. I just spent the last few minutes talking about them, but few leaders have actually put one in place, and it's tough to be successful with them. It's both easier and harder, I think, than it looks.
mhm,
Um, I think it's easier in that you can start small and you can create digital touch points over time, and you want to be doing that anyway. It should always be a program that's developing and changing as you go over time. It's harder in that you need that vision in place for what it looks like so you can make sure you have the right tools in place. So I think stepping back and doing the work around segmenting your customers, creating journeys for each of your segments, really interviewing and understanding what your customers are looking for are important pieces that go into building a program like that. So I think those are two that I thought of when I saw your question earlier.
mhm. Oh,
So
digital
yeah.
transformations really it's at a rate that's it's accelerating, especially because of this crisis where we're dealing with no-touch economies and no-touch business practices. So I guess it is coming out as a challenge. So how are managers kind of combating this?
Well, I don't know if it's combating it. It's like a slow embrace, I think, of it. You know, CS leaders have such a tough time, I think, sometimes getting budget for things. And so, you know, it's very easy for a sales team to get a budget because they can tie revenue to what they're working on.
Mm.
CS leaders don't always have that luxury. And frankly, senior executives don't always understand what customer success is all about still, because it is relatively new. And so getting budget can be tough. And so I think the biggest battle in digital transformation for teams is getting those tools and getting the budget for the tools that they do need. Um, I think the other thing that I see as a challenge is that a lot of CS leaders, because this is such a new field and it's been moving so quickly, most of the leaders in our field have come from inside the field. So they've risen from inside. Maybe they've gone from being a CSM to a lead to a manager to now the director of their program, and they're being tasked with how do you create a digital program inside of your customer success organization, and they've never done it before because they came up through the high touch side of the field. And so I think another challenge we're seeing is just people not knowing even where to start to put a program in place. And so, there's resources out there, but a lot of them are geared for very large organizations. So for leaders who are in early stage companies or even growth stage companies, it can be tough to find guidance on how to do that.
What advice would you give to these companies that are just starting out and that don't necessarily have the resources to really explore this?
You usually have at least one tool that you can use to kind of kick things off, and it's usually from the sales organization, and it's your CRM system. That is a starting point at least. So if you don't have other tools or you can't get the budget, start with your CRM system because you can do a lot with them usually. I'll use Salesforce as an example because that's the one I'm most familiar with. But for example, in Salesforce, you can set that up so that as a CS leader, you can do things like create workflows and playbooks inside of that system. You can create fields and areas for your CSMs to track critical information about customers. You can connect it to the back end of your own platform so that you can start porting customer information into the tool. So there's a lot of things that you can do to create smooth workflows and systems, even just using a tool that you probably already have inside your company. It may require some licenses for your CSMs, which is a cost, but it's a lot less of a cost than buying a totally new solution. So I would say that's a great place to start if you're an early stage company and that's all you've got to work with. Another thing that you can take a look at is your marketing team will usually have some sort of email marketing solution. And that's another thing you can use for some digital work with your customers. So look at what they've got. These are tools like, on the simple end, MailChimp, on the more elaborate end, maybe Marketo or HubSpot or things like that. So look at the tools that your marketing team has, see how you can leverage those, and you can kind of Frankenstein together a little digital program with just those two things. It may not be ideal, and it may not be where you want to end up in the long run, but it should be enough for you to prove out your ideas around what your digital program could look like so that you can then make the business case to go get more tools that you need later.
Kind of goes back to the high touch versus tech touch thing where,
Yeah.
it's kind of forcing you to be creative in a way.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think the winners in customer success are going to be the people who learn to put digital programs together and figure out how to transform their organizations so that at least the small customers don't have to have a CSM for every customer. That's not sustainable for most business models. So it won't work financially. So there needs to be a way to do that. And the CS leaders who really embrace that idea and don't try to force every single customer into a high touch model, but really look at how they can leverage technology, are going to come out of this with some experience that is incredibly valuable.
Mm-hmm. For sure. For sure. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So, what challenges does lead generation bring in for customer success? If you could share your insights on that.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you're thinking lead generation in terms of the CS team having to generate leads for cross-sell and upsell. So I'll just focus on that. Um, I think that sometimes CSMs feel really frustrated by being tasked to produce cross-sell and upsell leads for the sales organization. I would argue that they're the ones that are best positioned to uncover those leads, and they should be doing it. I think the problem comes in that they often aren't getting credit for doing it or compensation for the effort. So they're basically acting like an SDR team, but they're not getting compensated like an SDR team. And that creates a lot of frustration and friction between the teams. And they should be recognized for that work that they're doing. But I do think that the challenge for leaders is to, make sure that in some way their teams are being compensated if they're being asked to do that. It can be through a formal comp plan, or it can just be contests and spiffs and things that are a little easier to weave into your budget. So just make sure people feel recognized for that work, because it's really valuable work. But the CS people should be doing it, in my opinion. And I used to be VP of sales, and I've been a VP of customer success, so I can see it from both sides. I think CSMs, if they're doing their jobs right, are really well positioned to find leads, and so they should be doing that as part of their role. Um, I think, yeah. So that's kind of how I think about leads.
Does lead generation kind of stand in the way for customers? Does the challenges of lead generation kind of stand in the way of customer success?
It can, I mean, like, honestly, I don't see lead generation as anything that would get in the way of you having a strategic conversation with your client. In fact, in my opinion, selling is actually a way to build a stronger relationship with your client if you're doing it in a consultative way. So if you're having a consultative conversation, and let's say you find out that your customer is adding 3 more locations to their organization, and you could be doing work there, you're actually helping your customer if you figure out how to incorporate their 3 new locations into what you're doing. And if that brings in extra license fees or seats or whatever, great. The customer is not going to look at that as something that destroys your trusted advisor status. They're going to be happy that you're helping them. I think where selling or lead generation can get in the way is when your organization is trying to kind of cram new products down the throats of their customers when their customers don't have a genuine need. And that's when I think it sort of crosses the line, in my opinion.
I think also if the focus on is just on getting more and more and more leads, what happens is you might end up getting some not that they're cold leads, but they end up being like, what's the word I'm looking for?
The ones that drag on forever.
It's the ones where it's like, it's not really a relevant lead. It's just kind of there.
Yeah.
So I think do you think that kind of gets in the way of productivity in a way?
It can. I think CSMs can be careful about guarding their time against those. I mean, I would call them like a zombie lead. They're the ones that sit on your pipeline report forever, and they never do anything, and they never move forward. And those ones, if you've got a CS leader who's good at managing pipeline, they'll tell you just to close those and, make it a closed lost lead. I think you also have to be good at qualifying leads. You need to have specific questions. You need to be pushing clients through the pipeline. And if they get to a place where it's clear that it's not moving forward, kill it. It's not worth the time, like you said, to manage those leads. Now, if it starts to get really cumbersome, because the commercial side of the job is taking too much time, and it's getting in the way of the strategic value focused conversations with the customer. And usually we see this happen when it's a very hefty legal process to get a customer signed on a contract, or if there's a lot of products that need to get talked about. That's when I think having an account management team who is also involved with the clients can be really helpful. So you have account management focused on commercial, and you have CS focused on value.
I like the term zombie lead, by the way. I think I'm going to add that to my vocabulary.
Yeah. Those are the awful ones. You just have to get rid of them.
Yeah, I think you just kind of have to take that shot and just,
Yeah.
So moving on to my final question, are there any other thoughts you'd like to leave with our audience?
Um, I hope everyone feels excited about being part of our growing and changing field. I think there's so many resources out there for CMs and CS leaders. You guys have this resource, which is fantastic. Um, you have an opportunity right now too, considering that as we're recording this, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. You have an opportunity to network with so many other people online right now, because all of the events that were in person have moved to being online events. So there's meetups that are now huge and involve thousands of people instead of hundreds of people. And there's a lot of online ways to connect with others in the field. So take advantage of that. I also think that there's a lot of tools out there. So kind of figure out, what are the blogs you like to read? What are the podcasts you like to listen to? And, really take the time to do that, because our field is growing and changing so rapidly. You really need to stay up on top of the trends in the field in a way that is different from most other disciplines right now. So I would encourage people to do that. But I think the biggest thing is be excited. You are in a really good space. Um, I want to just call out two things that we have at the Success League for people. So if you are interested in podcasts, this is a visual podcast. I have two audio podcasts that I host. One is called Strike Deck Radio, and the other is called Reading for Success. And Reading for Success is a book review podcast. Each episode is only about 10 minutes long, and we talk about leadership and customer success books and articles on that one. If you're interested in formal training on customer success, we have a CS certification program. We also have leadership training program. Both of those are research-based, and they're taught by senior CS leaders. And so if you want more information, you can visit our website, which is thesuccessleague.io. And thank you so much for the conversation today. This was really fun.
Thank you so much. Be sure to check out the resources. I'll try to leave them in the link in the description below, but definitely check them out. I think it's really, if you've learned a lot from this interview, you can learn even more by accessing these resources. So be sure to check them out. Thank you so much for your insights, by the way, Christine. I for sure have learned a lot. So thank you for giving us your time. Like, your insights were really valuable. I know our audience is really going to enjoy this interview. So we'll be back with a new episode with a brand new expert soon. So stay tuned, and we'll see you around for the next one.